And with that, welcome into the Voice of College Football. We are presented by FanDuel, and we are presented on this set, maybe for a final time. So get a good look at it. This is probably it for our setting here in this room before it's taken over by somebody much younger and more important than me. And when I say much younger, I don't mean my future wife. Somebody much younger and, again, more important than me taking over this space. So the next time you see me, except for maybe the Iowa show on Tuesday, it will be from wherever I can find. I'll be sitting out on a patio somewhere or in the middle of the driveway or maybe in the garage or who knows where I'm going to be the next time you see me. Welcome into the Voice of College Football presented by FanDuel. Appreciate you being here. And my apologies. Please accept them for being so late. But when my son calls these days and he's expecting his wife, expecting here in the next 3 or 4 days, and myself and my situation changing drastically in the next few days myself, then, our conversations about Elvis Presley and politics and spiritual things and a lot of Major League Baseball history, then that gets reduced quite a bit here very soon. The last thing he said was, "Old man, you're not going to be able to stay up this late just shooting the breeze about Elvis and baseball for hours with me. We got responsibilities. You're going to have the same kind of responsibilities I've got right now again." And he's right. So again, the next time take a good look at the set. As I was falling back into the chair, I was thinking, I wonder how many times that, we've been here for 2 years and 2 months. And then prior to that, back in the original Connecticut home, let's see, we had probably about 1, 2, 3. Oh man, I can think of about 6 different sets that I came up with at various locations in my Connecticut home. And then in Ohio, basically 1, and then bam, to here. But you care nothing about that. We are going to talk college football playoff. We're going to talk about all the rumblings and everything going on in college football. I do want to get to a couple of articles. One courtesy, I believe Ross Dellinger, or is it Bill Conley? And then some House rumblings about the House settlement and the impact there. I am reading this firsthand. I am reading this for the first time. I have no idea what these gentlemen are putting out there. I do appreciate our buddy Mark from Mark's Holy Grail in providing some content for us tonight for me to delve into and get an initial, just off-the-cuff reaction, because I have, again, absolutely no idea what has been talked about concerning college football today. So afford me that opportunity to read these things for the first time and just simply, without any thought, respond and react. I don't think I can do my last final national show, at least on this particular set, with just the lone Florida State helmet sitting there. I don't think I can really do that. No. I just randomly chose this helmet. Just randomly. There we go. We are honoring the 1998 BCS championship game there. Just completely coincidental. The 1998 BCS championship game, and then the team that probably should have been playing in the 1998 BCS championship game. All right, welcome aboard. We appreciate you all being here. Who is here? Right out of the gate, Evil Badger. Thank you for that. And who is messing with my fonts? What is that garbage? Who's doing that? It's not the correct font. Who is screwing around with that? Hate that. What's going on? All right. Evil Badger, thank you so much for the contribution. It is much appreciated. All we hear from the real MVP every week is how great the SEC is, blah, 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 blah. I hope you forgive me, Evil Badger, for adding some blah, blah, blahs. It doesn't really matter how good the ratings are. It's the results on the field that matters to real MVP is a broken record. Okay, well, I do think that the last time the real MVP was on here, he was actually making a point concerning TV ratings. And the SEC really did take it to the Big Ten. Does that matter? Well, it doesn't change the results of a championship season from the Big Ten or from Indiana of the Big Ten. And then the previous season, Ohio State, and the previous season to that, Michigan, 3 consecutive Big Ten teams winning national championships. So who is the least watched team in college football? Wake Forest. Wake Forest wins the 2026 national championship, and let's say nobody really caught on to this the entire season. They're not watched the entire season, then they win the national championship. Does that take away from their national championship? No. Or let's say the ACC is the least watched conference, but somebody from the ACC, Miami most likely, wins the national championship. Does that take away from their prowess on the field, their accomplishment on the field? No. I think the real MVP's point, and it's a pretty obvious point, is that there are TV contracts in play, media contracts that will run out. They will expire, and then those TV ratings are going to be reviewed. And if the business folks in the SEC camp are as good as the business folks or better than the business folks in the Big Ten camp, then they will certainly be able to negotiate a better TV deal if they have better TV ratings. And since the Big Ten just re-upped with Fox and then added, of course, NBC and CBS this last go around, I don't know off the top of my head when the SEC contract comes up, but it most likely is much sooner than the Big Ten. So they should be able to take advantage of their ratings prowess. So Evil Badger, I get your point, but at the same time, we're just talking about cause and effect is what the point was there. But thank you for the contribution. Do enjoy seeing everybody there in the chat. Timothy Johnson, Evil Badger, John, Doreen is here, or many of you were here, Michigander and others, when the show was supposed to start. So again, we do appreciate you being here, and our apologies for being tardy, but I would not trade those minutes for anything. So thank you to our guy, Groy James. Thanks for being here. Good to see you as well. All right, let's get to the content at hand in regards to what is out there, what's being talked about, including, I see more than just rumblings of a compromised 20-team college football playoff. 20 teams? It makes more sense than 24 just in that there are less teams, and there shouldn't be 24 teams in a college football playoff. There should not be 24 teams in a college football playoff. And I keep saying this, and one of these days I'm going to produce it, while others that you may frequent on your college football travels, media types like myself, probably point out and differentiate 4, 5, 6 factors that need to be weighed in determining a college football playoff format going forward. I have determined 25. So I will produce a video. Don't know when that's going to be. I was hoping to do that actually tonight. I don't know when that's going to be, but sometime in the next, 2 years, sometime soon. I've been asked to do this. So before we move on with the evaluation of some of the content, the articles, the social media posts that are out there today, just to let you know a little bit about myself. My name's Mark Rogers. My background's in television media for a long, long time. So obviously before we had all of this internet business, there was television actual broadcast television. So I was doing that from 1991 on. Journalism major, sports director, CBS station, play-by-play guy, but most of all, a sports anchor for 9 years on television, ESPN production operations manager for 19 years. And doing this, of course, the owner and founder of the Voice of College Football that has been running basically since 2010, really churning since 2013. And hopefully we will find the resources and the time to make a go of what this was 3 or 4 years ago. And even way beyond that, because obviously that was not sustainable, but the next version will be, again, God willing. All right, let's get to a few of these items. So one in particular that I think is probably not as important as the other item, but more relatable, because you guys care how many teams are in this playoff. You care what this playoff system looks like, how it's determined, how it's the playoff system's determined, but also how the individual playoff teams are selected each season. I know I do. And much has been talked about concerning a 2014 playoff and whether it makes sense. What are the pros and cons? Bill Connolly wrote this article, and Bill Connolly is extremely respected in this space. I, for one, I know that I've partaken of Bill Connolly content in the past, but not as much as you might expect. So I can't really think of anything that he's done per se, but he's a big metrics guy. I know he's determined all sorts of rankings and ratings, so forth and so on. And again, has done some fine work by reputation. And so let's see what he has to say concerning pros and cons of a 2014 college football playoff that is being proposed and mostly pushed by the Big Ten. I am guessing that he's going to cite a lot of the things that I have already cited and have been for umpteen years about expanded playoffs and inviting. Let's understand, this is an invitational. It's not a playoff. And this is a term that maybe I coined, maybe I didn't. I would think that there were other people out there having the same thought when we went to a 4-team playoff in 2014 that it hit me rather quickly. Well, this is not a playoff. A playoff is an objective system that determines where the system of objective wins and losses and metrics determine the teams that qualify for the playoff. They're not selected. So we are really playing an invitational. The teams are invited. They don't, there's only 5 of them that earn the spot. Is it 5? Yeah, 5. 4 from the 5 highest rated ranked conference champions. So that's not even when you really, yeah, anyway. So in a sense, those are even invited to a certain extent because Duke was not invited. James Madison was invited. They were ranked higher. But these teams are largely invited. It's an invitational. It's not even a playoff, a true playoff. And I used to accentuate that point, especially in the 14 playoff time. But now that we at least have conference champions basically automatically in the playoff, then that's improved things considerably. All right. So Connolly says here at this point, a 2014 playoff has become the sports version of nobody asked for it and almost nobody seems to actually like or want it, but decision makers are very busy trying to convince everyone that anyone understands the implications. Okay, despite waves of negative reactions from media and fans, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti has been slowly building consensus for a 2014 playoff. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, previously a skeptic, expressed support last week. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark is already on board. At this point, it appears the SEC. You would think from just the standpoint of having teams qualify for an expanded playoff, you would think that the Big 12 and the ACC would be the first ones on board, if that's all that it involved. It appears Greg Sankey is the only holdout. "2014 playoff would have fundamentally changed a fan's relationship with the college football season in a way that no other recent changes have. With conferences' spring meetings kicking into gear, expect Petitti's push to continue garnering headlines and move closer with massive implications." Doing my best not to read this thing word for word, but to kind of edit it as we go. Expansion is the word for the day. NCAA basketball tournaments expanded to 76. This might change a fan's experience in filling out his bracket. But the jewel of the March Madness experience is the fire hose thrill right at the first weekend of the tournament, and that won't look much different. Okay, what is being discussed for football is a far more extensive expansion. Doubling the size of the playoff from 12 to 24, eliminate conference championship games and allow for no automatic qualifiers aside from having one spot reserved for a group of 6 team. In the interim, Petitti has also proposed a temporary expansion to 16 teams, not a normal clean 4-round bracket, but a convoluted 5-round bracket with 2 first-round byes. Okay. The only thing that I understand about the need for having a bridge from 12 to 24 being 16, let's say, is because of the TV contracts, that there has to be kind of a bridge of sorts to fully determine the value and what's fair in terms of the delivery of the games, by whom, and how much should be paid, what it's worth. Because otherwise, if you're determining the best format that should be for you, the college football fan, it should be about what is best for you without, of course, putting the players in needless harm's way or doing anything that's harmful or some kind of deterrent against their well-being physically and otherwise, of course. But this is all for you. This is all for you. It's for me. It's for us. This is why this all exists. This gets forgotten. This is for the fans. If the fans don't exist, if you don't exist, this doesn't exist. And these guys are playing intramural sports. All right, quite a few reasons expressed for why football must expand. The most prominent one, the college sports industry needs the money. Okay, we heard about these alarming financial issues and debt totals by institutions such as Rutgers during the roundtable at the in Washington, D.C. recently. Since we're finally paying players, and since we're doing so while continuing to allow coaches' salaries and buyouts to rapidly escalate, athletic directors are desperate to increase revenue wherever possible. Okay, before we get too deep into this, let's say the industry brings in X amount of money, $1 billion a year, just throwing out a figure that's not accurate, but for this example, $1 billion a year. Therefore, the players are being paid by this revenue share that hit $20.5 million for all sports within a athletic department for the first time this past off season, this past July, that it was announced and determined that each athletic department would have the opportunity to spend $20.5 million toward its athletes, mostly football, 75 to 80%, 85% going to football for each of these universities. So that's one way they get paid. And then, of course, NIL, which comes from outside suitors, boosters, corporations, and the like. That the sport needs to be able to pay the players, okay? The players should benefit from the revenue generated, but I think we might be leading into a point being made that we can't afford the players, therefore we need to make more money. So we are not financially responsible, so we are going into debt, which I understand a lot of these debt figures are overblown and they are twisted and contorted to build a narrative for us to feel sorry for these universities and these sports departments. But that the industry currently doesn't accommodate for and is not built to accommodate these escalating salaries. So we got to do something about that to keep up with the escalating salaries. Don't escalate the salaries. And again, much of that, liken it to professional sports where the revenue share is the salary and the NIL is the sponsorship deal. Well, this is unlimited. The NIL should be unlimited. That's the American way. That's capitalism. Fully supported. Fully supported in every particular way. However, the revenue share they should be looking at the revenue share saying, wow, we are having financial difficulties keeping up with what is expected by the athletes or what we think they should be paid. So we're going to have to look for ways to ruin the sport, but make more money. So we'll see how this reads past this. Athletic directors are desperate to increase revenue. Phillips said last week, if you're going to ask presidents and chancellors and boards to continue to invest in their football programs, it's really important that they have hope and they have an opportunity at the beginning of the season to get in the playoff. It's kind of backwards engineering, backwards thinking. We want to give you hope. You're not going to have hope for your particular football program based on your hard work, your ability to hire well, coaching staffs, head coach, to go out and build a competent football program. We're going to give you hope by expanding the number of slots open. So you are no better of a football program than you were before, but suddenly we're giving you the appearance of being a better football program. Pitt, Minnesota, Arizona, Virginia Tech, we're giving you the appearance of being competent and capable and having a legitimate shot of being relevant, because relevance means you made the playoff or you're in playoff contention. You didn't make that happen yourself. We built a system. We expanded a system to make you feel relevant and look relevant to people who aren't the fans, who aren't smart enough or just not invested enough to really see beyond that. He, of course, referring to ACC presidents, chancellors, I'm betting he doesn't care all that much about presidents, chancellors of schools outside the Power Four. Expanding the CFP from 4 to 12 teams added more than $700 million in annual college sports revenue, but everyone needs even more, and no one wants the boosters who are writing the big checks to feel unrewarded. Beyond that, Petiti and others are trying to convince fans that with larger playoff, teams would be naturally encouraged to play more difficult and more interesting non-conference games, depending on who they are. Why would, again, I'll pick on the schools that I just kind of represented as the mid-tier of those conferences, Virginia Tech, Minnesota, those kind of schools. Why would they play more difficult non-conference games when they know we can win easy non-conference games, go 4-5 in the Big Ten, or 5-4 in the Big Ten, go 8-4, make the playoff? It's the same conundrum we've got now, just with lower ranked teams in the future. Coaches really want an expanded playoff. Doesn't that make it a worthy pursuit? Coaches want an expanded playoff because very few of them can legitimately guarantee that they're almost always going to make the playoff. The rest of them want to look good by Shane Beamer, South Carolina, Colin Klein now at Kansas State, those type of situations where we can make the playoff once every 5 years, maybe even better than that in a 2014 field, but probably once every 5 years. And the other years we'll be close. We'll have some years where we're close and we can say we contended for the playoffs. Therefore, that game against Clemson, the last game of the season, was exciting. We lost. We got knocked out of the playoffs. We're 7-5. Of course, part of the draw of big non-conference games is that they have consequences. Ohio State, Texas, the crown jewel of the 25 and 26 non-conference slates, would have had no playoff impact whatsoever with a 2014 field. In reality, expanding to 24 teams most likely would simply encourage more teams to schedule easy wins so they can get to 9-3 or so, 8-4. If big brand teams want to schedule big games and therefore sell more expensive tickets, excite their fan base, and make their conference's TV package even more attractive, they'll do it. If they don't, they won't. The size of the CSP won't have much to do with that. Okay. Yeah. We've made the same point for a long time. Basically, let me say it this way, as I have many times. When you have a limited number of games, limited number of teams, and then you set a standard of excellence, meaning a playoff, what you need to do to qualify for a playoff, which again is vague other than winning a conference championship. But there's a criteria we have in our heads. 12 teams, it works out. 10-2 gets you to the playoff. That should do it. That it only makes sense that there's a sweet spot in terms of protecting the regular season as meaningful. There's a sweet spot. So when we only had a 4-team playoff, it was so difficult to make the playoffs that when we got to the last weekend of the season, what did we usually have? Maybe 6 teams? If we went through the 14 playoff, 2014 through 23, we would see generally only 2 teams that did not make it that had a legitimate shot to make it. Take 2023. Who got knocked out? Georgia, Florida State. 2023. Well, going into the final weekend of the regular season, Ohio State was 11-0. But going into conference championship weekend, the final weekend, Florida State got knocked out. Georgia got knocked out. It was 6 teams vying for 4 spots. We would see that play over again and again and again and again. 2022 was Georgia, TCU, Ohio State, Michigan. Who got knocked out the final weekend? TCU lost the Big 12 championship game, still made it. Georgia beat LSU. They weren't going to make the college football. No, Georgia beat, yes, LSU. They were not going to. 2022. No. Georgia beat, LSU in the SEC championship game. Seems like I'm forgetting something here. No, Georgia beat LSU in the, LSU was not getting to the playoff. 2023. Or 2022. 23 I just outlined. Georgia, Florida State. Anyway, if we went through every situation each year, we'd see that there were only 5 or 6 teams on the final weekend vying for 4 spots. And so very few games mattered the final regular season weekend or conference championship weekend. We're in a sweet spot right now at 12. 12 is a pretty good number, just in terms of number. I don't like the format. I don't like how they're selected. The scheduling sucks. So much wrong with college football right now that we can fix. We can fix, meaning you and I, we can fix it. We can put our brains together. We can fix it. I have fixed it theoretically. Just needs to be applied. I don't know if 12 is great. 12, 14, 16, in that range. That's a good number of teams in terms of keeping the regular season meaningful, but also interesting for more, for a legitimately strong season. Now you're looking at the 8-2 Auburn, 8-2 Tennessee game as being interesting, compelling, because it also is not just two good teams playing that, they're out of the playoff, but this is a good game. I'll watch it. No, it's meaningful. We saw USC and Nebraska play one of the first games in November, one of the first weekends of November, both with 2 losses. And that was like winner advances, loser goes home. We saw that with Iowa against Oregon. We saw that various times throughout the season where we knew elimination time. There were enough of those involving good teams, actual quality teams. We go to 24, we pass that threshold, and then we get to the other end of the spectrum that was opposite the elite, only like 5 or 6 teams in contention the final weekend too. You can be 8-3 and lose the final weekend. So big deal. You're going to be a 23 seed instead of a 19 seed. Okay. If anyone's waiting to come on, we will get to calls. I've left the call-in line there in the chat. I think we'll get to calls because we got a lot to sort through here and not a heck of a lot of time. We will kick in the 150 deal for an extra hour and extra hours beyond that if you would like to keep me on here. We can always do that. What do we got? All right. Let's get back to this deal right here, and then I'll check out some comments. Problem with 24. This is Bill Conley, ESPN. In the early days of debates about the CFP, skeptics talked a lot about how a playoff would devalue the regular season. It was easy for proponents like myself to push back by simply pointing out although specific games in a given season would take on less meaning, a lot more would have added meaning. That's what I just explained. So he's basically going through the knock against the expansion from 4 to 12 was, well, 2 11-0 teams doesn't matter. Ohio State, Indiana in the Big Ten championship game doesn't matter. Yes, those do exist, but they are infrequent situations. So we've seen that play out where the move from 4 to 12 has made a few games less important or less meaningful. Based on how the CFP rankings looked the week before championship week in 2025, remember conference title games would have been eliminated in the 2014 model. We would have been looking at something like this for a 2025 24-team CFP. Let's look at how interesting these games could be. Virginia against USC. Winner plays Ohio State. North Texas against Alabama. Winner plays Oklahoma, which they did. Houston, Miami. Winner plays Oregon. Tulane, Texas. Winner plays Texas Tech. Georgia Tech, BYU. Winner plays Ole Miss. Michigan, Vandy. Winner plays Georgia. Iowa, Notre Dame. Winner plays Texas A&M. Arizona, Utah. Winner plays Indiana. Where's our 24 seed? That, of course, is a G5. North Texas. Tulane's also there. So we've got 2 G5, G6s, and the lowest ranked of the power conference teams is Iowa. So we got an 8-4 there. We only have one 8-4. Okay, let's think about rivalry week. Michigan needed a miracle upset of Ohio State to have any playoff hope. Instead, the Wolverines lost by 18. They're comfortably in. So Michigan still gets in at number 19. Alabama had to beat Auburn to keep its place in the CFP field of 12. Proceeded to blow a 17-point lead. Oklahoma needed to beat LSU to hold on. Yeah, they trailed with 5 minutes left. This is what happened this past season. Well, with the 2014 field, both teams are comfortably in. Don't have to beat their rivals. Texas Vandy needed to beat both rivals, Texas A&M and Tennessee, respectively, and hope for some chaos above them. They won, but did not get the chaos. 2014 field, Texas is in regardless. Vanderbilt's in. Theory, number 23, Georgia Tech facing Georgia, could have had playoff stakes with a 24-teamer, but the committee actually boosted the Yellow Jackets in the rankings after another loss to the Dogs. Turned out they would have been in regardless. So making the point that Georgia Tech would have made the playoffs regardless, even though they lost to Georgia because it was a close game and they played all those zillion overtimes, and they actually impressed and enhanced their ranking. Only 2 rivalry games are enhanced by a 24-teamer. Arizona would have replaced Arizona State in the field with a win in the Territorial Cup. So, yeah, you're going to have any playoff number or format. You can find instances where you would have to say, you know what? That playoff format 90% of the time sucks and doesn't work and takes away from the regular season. However, there's going to be 10% of the time where you say, you know what? That made that game that's played, especially a rivalry game, meaningful nationally. Virginia would have clinched both the ACC title and a CFP berth with a win against Virginia Tech. Meanwhile, number 19 Tennessee got beaten by Vandy so badly that the Vols would have fallen out. Number 21 SMU would have fallen out with an upset loss against Cal. They were replaced by Iowa, which blew out Nebraska, and in theory, North Texas, which blew out Temple. Bill Conley's point here is we're enhancing 2 or 3 games while diminishing 5 or 6 others. Yeah, absolutely. Every time we add a certain percentage of teams, we end up with an even higher percentage of mulligans to tolerate. Yeah. He's bringing examples to a case that we've made for years. Some conference championship games or conference title races, there's no championship games in this scenario, become anticlimactic. 4 co-champions of the SEC and the Mountain West, 3 in the American, 2 in the Big 12, and Conference USA. And, of course, the Big Ten championship would have had 12-0 Indiana, 12-0 Ohio State, both undefeated in the Big Ten. No conference championship games. Only 3 of the conferences would have had solo champs. Now, they would have told us who the champion was based on their convoluted and mostly invalid system of tiebreakers. And he points out here, Bill Connolly does, that, again, he's not debating that, of course, to those particular fan bases, those rivalry games and those big games are still meaningful, of course. You know, it could be 0-11 Washington State, and they're important to those fan bases. So that doesn't change for you in terms of personal value. But we're talking about the the value of the games and the worth of the games nationally. "2014 playoff, no conference title game stakes would drain most of the excess meaning from college football's biggest weekend." The original version of Petitti's expansion idea would have been like play-in games the week before the championship games. I just think that that's just overload, overkill. It's interesting to a certain extent, but it becomes this never-ending cascade of play-in games into the championship games in the conference, then into the playoffs and 4 rounds of playoffs, and it's just this never-ending tournament that people have to try to keep up with. Yeah. Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, not playing meaningful games. Again, take out the Luke Fickell year, Ohio State, a 12-team playoff. They would not have missed one since '04. A 12-team playoff. 2014 playoff? Kidding me? So it appears to be a fine article here by Bill Connolly. Again, conference championship games. So I am wrestling with those right now myself because my thought here is that conference championship games have taken a huge hit. They are not as meaningful as they used to be. Is everyone meaningless? No. Texas Tech BYU game was meaningful, but they are largely meaningless toward the playoff. And so we either need to address the conference championship games and make them meaningful once again and bring great value to them, legitimate value. It has to be backed up by legitimate regular season standings in the conferences, not Duke, not a Duke situation, or we get rid of them. And then that's going to make it difficult to determine a fair conference champion because these conferences are way too big. So I got into this not knowing how long this article was. We can dive into this at another time as well. Let's look at this point here. Who says we have to ditch conference title games? Anybody on the line? Not a soul. Okay. Even if this runaway train is somehow slowed down, the CFP either stays at 12 teams or limits its expansion to 16 with a clean 4-round bracket, not the 5-round ridiculousness mentioned above. There's no question the current college football calendar needs adjusting. From the bracket revealed to the January 19th title game last year's 12-team CFP took 43 days. The next 2 years will somehow be even worse. Having a title game after the next semester has already begun, therefore forces coaches to deal with an entire transfer cycle. The two primary methods proposed for speeding things up are starting the season on what is now week 0, full week, Labor Day, before Labor Day, ditching conference title games, thereby lopping off the last week of the regular season. We also have to figure out where Army Navy fits. And so, yeah, fitting this all inside the calendar is an issue because of the expanded field. The problem isn't the title games, it's teams having to play a 13th game. So let's get creative and make championship weekend everyone's 12th game. Oh, live the flex life. Okay. I've been looking at this myself. A possible flex schedule, the last regular season week to determine the conference championships. I've been toying with this myself, if this is where he's headed. Look at 2026 in the Pac-12, the new Pac-12, the redesigned Pac-12 will begin play this season with only 8 teams, but it wants its teams to play a customary 8-game schedule. So after its round robin schedule, this is phenomenal. This is great. I didn't even know this. So I don't even know it for sure, but I know where we're headed here. So after its round robin schedule, think Big 12 after certain teams left, Colorado, et cetera, to the Pac-12, Missouri, Texas A&M left. Think Big 12 when there were only 10 teams and everyone played everyone. But on top of that, so everyone plays everyone. That's a conference, by the way, when everyone plays everyone. So after the round robin, which everyone plays everyone, you got week 12. And the Pac-12 championship game has been set for week 14. Teams will play a flex week of designated rematches in between. The conference has announced 4 tentative matchups, but it's reserved the right to adjust matchups based on the best interests of the league, be that to avoid a repeat of the conference title game pairing or perhaps to create a more favorable matchup for possible CFP contenders. Yes. I believe this is worth looking at. It's a bit gimmicky and it plays with rivalry weekend. Excuse me. So let's take last season. This is what this would have looked like in the SEC, for example. So Bill Connolly's looking at 2025 SEC as an example, avoiding rematches whenever possible and trying to set the most interesting possible stakes. Here's what the SEC Championship Flex week might look like, have looked like this last fall, since everyone played 4 non-conference games instead of 3 for the sake of ease. We'll say each team dropped one of its easier non-conference games and simply remove one win from everyone's record. Okay. SEC Championship game, as was played, Georgia, Bama. But then you got number 13, Texas, taking on number 6, Ole Miss. You got number 14, Vandy, against number 8, Oklahoma. The SEC Championship game remains the same. But for maximum CFP stakes, with a 12-team field, we can also create 2 approximate play-in games. Although Texas, Ole Miss, that's a bit questionable. So nothing's going to be perfect here, but Texas is 8-3. They would have gone to 9-3 with the win against Ole Miss, but Ole Miss would still be 10-2. So Ole Miss is likely in still with the loss, but Texas is playing for its playoff life in this scenario. So the flex scheduling idea, to me, without going into all the details of what this would have looked like last season, then the worst teams in the league play the worst teams in the league, and they can just, if you want to play, watch the game, whatever. If you want to watch LSU and Kentucky play or Mississippi State and Auburn, nobody cares. I think it's worth looking at. It's extremely interesting, and we got our first taste of that during the COVID year of 2020 when the Big Ten attempted to play a play-in or a flex week, the final weekend of the season, but there were so many teams that opted out and had COVID and blah, 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 that it pretty much ruined it. Never really happened. But that's what the Big Ten was gunning for. The final weekend of the season was to play a flex schedule based on the standings. And that way you can more legitimately, in a more valid way, make matchups to determine a championship. play the games that needed to be played, since not everyone plays each other. You can get those games played the final weekend of the season. However, they toy with, mess up possibly rivalry weekend. That's what would be difficult. So, for example, in the Big Ten, let's say there was no championship game in the Big Ten, no championship game anymore, and we did the flex weekend, the final weekend. So, after all the games were played in the Big Ten, 8 conference games, or maybe 9. The 1 seed would play the 2 seed, the 3 seed would play the 4 seed, the 5 play the 6, and on down the line in the Big Ten. But that doesn't mean that the 1-2 winner would be the Big Ten champion. Most likely it would, but the 1 seed could be such an overwhelming 1 seed that they could lose the final game and still be the Big Ten champion. Just the standings would be evaluated and lined up after this final flex week. But what do you do? Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, Northwestern, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, etc. You play them the last regularly scheduled week, but then you still have a flex week after that. That would be kind of odd. That would change the rivalry in terms of just the feel, the dynamics. Then there would be a possibility that, let's say, Ohio State, Michigan would play. They certainly would have in 2021, 2, and 3 would have played back-to-back weeks. And neither was a championship game, just the flex week. Okay, Michigander, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate you. I saw a good point about the 2014 playoff that makes sense. There is still meaning to the regular season. Vying for the top 8 seeds for a bye will help the regular season, but 24 is still demeaning. Okay, Michigander is pointing to a 2014 field where you've got, and this is really the only format I'm aware of off the top of my head. Excuse me, the 4. Yes, excuse me. The top 8 seeds receive byes. The 16 other teams, meaning seeds 9 through 24, they play the first round. So you got 16 teams playing 8 games. So the 8 winners then play the 8 byes. The teams with the byes play the 8 winners, and they play in the home field of the 8 bye teams. Okay. Oh, man. I got so much to talk about here that I won't get into tonight. But my basic issue with byes is that, let me just put it this way. I could do an hour-long dissertation on byes and what I generally don't like about them. My thought about byes is like 80 to 90% negative. However, I will say this, that if you're going to have 16 teams in a playoff, for example, I don't think it's just right that let's just choose a team. And I'm not going to choose one of the obvious ones because I think some of your thought process gets tied to whoever my example is, Georgia, Ohio State. Let's take somebody strange, odd. Purdue is the number 1 team in the country. Purdue's the number 1 seed. They have just proven to be a juggernaut. Purdue is the number 1 seed. They're the top team in the country. They are 12-0, and they're the 1 seed. And the 16 seed is a 9-3 Georgia Tech team. Purdue's only benefit, their only reward for being by far the best team in college football all season is they get to play a home game, but they don't get a bye. So, although I don't like byes, the reason I generally don't like them is because we're putting them in the hands of committees to determine the byes. If the byes are truly earned, as is the case in the NFL and other sports, if the byes are truly earned by excellence in the regular season and not perceived excellence or the selection of a committee, determining the buys, but they are earned, then I think that they can be a valuable thing and a justified thing that gives even more meaning and enhancement to the regular season. Because if everyone just plays the same amount of games, but you've got truly exceptional teams in the regular season and then 8-4, 9-3 teams, and all you're differentiating between those teams is they have to play on the road, I don't know that that's really enough. And the great thing about all of this is very little of it is that easy to justify or tear to shreds because there is gray area. Hardly anything that I'm going to state and have stated either tonight or for the years, not just the last couple months that this has been a topic, but I've been tearing this thing up in terms of playoff models for years. And what I will finally, in the end, propose, that's not going to be perfect. There's always going to be gray area. There is always going to be, let me try that again. There will always be gray area, and there will always be instances in which you can come up with a scenario to say, your playoff system's not a good playoff system because if this happens, then that isn't going to be real fair or justified. So good points there, Michigander. The true draw of a flex week is predictability. It's flexibility. A conference can determine its priorities and feed them. There are flaws in any plan. That's what I just said. You could end up with 3 8-0 teams in a more top-heavy conference like the Big Ten. And what exactly do you do about a conference with odd-number teams like the ACC? I'd personally just make the last place team in the ACC play at UConn. There you go. But if part of the rationale of expanding to 24 teams is to create the TV revenue necessary to offset losing title games, flex weeks allow us to avoid that altogether. What a poor reason to offset losing conference title games is to expand to 24 teams in a playoff. And we do have an issue with what to do with bad performances in conference championship games and evaluating those teams. Because for the committee 2 years ago to have said, we're going to ignore conference championship games. For the losers, of course. For the winners, we can't ignore those results. This is stupid. Think about this. Let this sink in. We got conference championship games coming up this weekend. Okay? And we're a 13-member selection committee that is going to select the 12 teams to play in the college football playoff. Well, those games matter for the winner. So there is a true evaluation and reward and benefit to winning the game, but there's no negative evaluation or even a positive evaluation for the loser. If you lose to the number one team in the country 31-30, that should be a positive evaluation. But there's no evaluation for the loser. There's no consequence for the loser, but there's consequence for the winner. That doesn't make any sense. This is when I wish for a more prominent place in college football. If I was Reese Davis speaking to the committee representative after the championship games of 2024, I know what my first two questions would have been. Did you watch the conference championship games? And you know what their answer should have been? Should have been no, we didn't watch them. That's because they shouldn't have been influenced by them because they were not evaluating the losers. And you didn't need to evaluate the winners because they just won the games. And I would have said, did you even see what the scores were of the games? You shouldn't even have seen what the scores were of the games. If you were truly playing out what your stance was, and that's that these conference championship games did not matter for the losers. That's a tough one to deal with because while Notre Dame's a good one to pick on, Notre Dame sitting at home, not having to expose itself to playing Georgia. Alabama did have to expose itself to playing Georgia and was getting its rear ends kicked in. So you have to evaluate Alabama getting its rear ends kicked in, but at the same time you have to understand, well, there are other teams out there, Miami, Notre Dame, and others that are not being exposed to that type of game, and they're on the fence as well. We should probably go through this section for sure. Fans did not ask for this. Let's see what Bill Connolly has here. Love it. If you're going to go through an example and you want to remove all bias from anyone thinking, well, he's talking about Ohio State or he's bringing up Georgia. And yeah, Georgia, well, they weren't that good last year or whatever. Yeah, go to Purdue. Just default to Purdue to try to rid everyone's mind of any kind of bias. Okay. I do want to read this section because I think this is at the heart of the matter right here. What do you want? What do you want? You all, including myself, I will speak for the fans here. I will speak for all of us because I got the mic, but we are all invested in this as fans. What do you want? What do you want? I think that the typical college football fan wants a selection process that's fair. First, they want a scheduling system that is going to not be so uneven across the country where at the end of the season we're saying, what do we do here? Man, this 8-4 team played this ridiculously tough schedule. This 10-2 team, well, they played an easy schedule. How do we equate that? You have to fix scheduling. I'm going to be talking about this and pounding the table about this in future weeks. We have to fix the scheduling in college football. That is the stage setter. That sets the stage for all of this, is getting scheduling right, because then you can have more meaningful games, more fair results, more valid results to then evaluate the teams, whether that's objectively or otherwise. Get the scheduling fixed. And then I think your typical college football fan just wants to know, hey, am I watching teams in this playoff that really earned it? Are these really good teams? Really, really good teams. Not perfect. It's not so exclusive. It's not 2005. You don't have to be 2005 Texas and USC in the Rose Bowl. You don't have to be all-time great teams, but you have to be really good. Not just you're decent. Good job, Pitt. You went 8-4. You're in the playoff. Good job, Iowa. You went 8-4, and you lost to a lot of really good teams. You didn't beat anyone any good, but we're going to reward you for losing to a lot of good teams. It's almost like, look at the backlash that most fans have about Hall of Fames. What is the backlash these days? When a lot of outside of that particular player's fan base that is pushing a Lou Whitaker or a Don Mattingly for the Hall of Fame, let's say, that most fans are saying this is not the Hall of Decent. This is not the Hall of Good. This is the Hall of Fame. This is for the College Football National Championship. And why watch Virginia Tech and Missouri play a first-round playoff game that we know is going to result in the winner getting spanked by 5 touchdowns. What is the meaning of that? Oh, more football is better football? Let's play bowl games. That's where the more football is better is always better. That's where that can be executed. That's where that can take place. More football is always better. Play bowl games. But we want to see quality teams, and we all have a different threshold, different standard, but I think most of you, if we all could talk right now, and it wasn't just me talking with all of you, but I could hear back, and I can in the chat, of course. I think, yeah, a lot of you would argue, was Texas a playoff team last year? Many of you would say no. Some of you would say, yeah, I could have seen Texas in the playoff. And, there would have been a little back and forth about Vandy, Texas. Of course, Alabama had the meltdown against Georgia, looked really bad a couple times. Yeah, on the fence. Of course, Notre Dame. I'm guessing Notre Dame would be the team that most people would select as that was the team that got ripped off. That was the team that should have been in the playoff. That was the team that was of the quality to have played in the playoff. But I think most of us, if we ran through the playoff field last year, throw out James Madison in Tulane, really, Alabama would receive a lot of pushback that they should not have made it. And I don't totally agree with that. But besides that, was Indiana a playoff team? Well, yes. They were a playoff team. Was Ohio State a playoff? Yes, Ohio State was a playoff team. Was Oregon a playoff team? Yes, Oregon should have been in a playoff. Was Texas Tech a playoff team? Yes, Texas. And again, I'm trying to answer for most of you. Was Miami a playoff team? Well, going into the playoff, maybe some of you would have said, I don't think this team's good enough to play in the playoff, but they showed us something different. Georgia, playoff team, won the SEC. Ole Miss, 11-1, played really good playoff team. Like, there was only one or two. I'm not talking about Tulane and James Madison. They're a different deal. One or two teams, maybe Alabama, maybe Miami going into it, that some of you, but very few, would have said, I don't consider them really playoff teams. And then out of teams that missed the playoff, I doubt that there would have been a few of you said Vandy, a few of you would have said Texas. And again, you got to put yourself before Vandy lost to Iowa in a bowl game. You got to put yourself at the end of the regular season. There would have been a few of you that would have campaigned for BYU, Texas, Vandy. But I'm guessing less than 15% of you. And most of you would have said, probably a good 60, 70, 80% would have said Notre Dame should be in a playoff this year. But basically, look at that. Like 10, 11 of the 12 teams, I think almost all of us feel very comfortable not just belonged in a 12-team playoff, but belong in a playoff to play for a national championship last year. Am I right about that? Oh, you have no idea, Michigander. All sorts of old-time baseball knowledge. Look up something called the Immaculate Grid if you don't know about it. So I hope I'm getting through on my point there. So again, we will get to what he says here. because he may be taking this in a completely different direction, or he could be doing the same thing as I am. I hope that everyone's watching, that everyone who is watching is subscribed to the Voice of College Football, and please like the video. And we are presented by FanDuel. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to go through this section. It is characteristic of modern sports that fans don't really have a say in anything. Why don't we change that? Can we change that? I started off the show by saying that this is all for you. It's all for us. That's why all of this exists. If you didn't exist, then this would not exist as a sport, as a billion-dollar industry. These guys would be playing flag football in intramurals. Ticket prices only rise over time. Television only becomes more of a driving factor. Fans weren't consulted during the massive rounds of recent conference realignment, but I'm not sure anything has ever taken fan sentiment less into account than the push for 24. In a recent social media poll from On3, 79% of respondents expressed a desire for the playoff and either to stay at 12 or expand to 16. The 24 team got 9% of support. 9%. It's also noticeable how few schools might actually benefit from this. I honestly understand the need for more money. Granted, it would be easier to sympathize if schools were capable of showing discipline with coaches' salaries, but no athletic director kept his or her job because of great financial discipline. Hmm. 79%. If that is an accurate poll, and if it's done well by On3, then it should have like a plus or minus 2% factor involved there. So you don't want a 2014 playoff. Then why is there going to be a 2014 playoff? You don't want one. And this is who this is for. It's for you. If it's for the players, then they would just be playing intramurals. It's for you. So it shouldn't go to 24 unless you want it to go to 24. So why don't we, here at the Voice of College Football, say something about this, do something about this, make a strong stand against this. You don't want 24. So why would there be 24? You are the reason college football as a entertainment industry exists. So if you don't want 24, there shouldn't be 24. It shouldn't even be, they should just take a poll. And as soon as it comes back that it's a valid poll and there were enough respondents to make it valid in a cross section, to make it mathematically reliable, that should have been the end of the discussion. There should have been an announcement by the college football commissioner or the governing body to say, we considered expanding the college football playoff to 24 because we thought there could be some valid reasons to do so. However, we polled College Football Nation and we received an overwhelming response of 79% negative. We do not want 24. Therefore, we're throwing that out because the sport is for you. My name is Mark Rogers. I could be your college football commissioner. I could head up a governing body. We could take this on. We could right the wrongs of the sport. There are all sorts of wrongs with the sport related to on the field transfer portal, NIL, etc. But this is at the heart of the competition on the field. The expansion or not of the playoff and the format and the selection process. 13 people controlling the sport? That should not be. And the scheduling that needs to be addressed, which again is the component scheduling that sets the stage for the selection of the teams, whether that's objectively or not. Whatever your mode of selection, a huge component in selecting the teams is based on the results, which is tied to scheduling, and scheduling needs to be drastically addressed, fixed now. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice for College Football. And Jared, we did address the supposed need to play the players. No, the money's needed to keep up with the escalation of the pay. But the escalation does not need to exist if the industry does not support it. And if the industry does not support it in a way that is solvent within the current structure, then the players don't need to make more money. All right. Adam Lamparello's hanging in there. He's here. We always appreciate seeing Adam. And even though I should have wrapped this up a long time ago, Adam, we will give you your, 2 minutes? The call-in line is there in the chat. Adam, you're on the mic. In the meantime, check out my book, Disputed National Champions. If you love college football history combined with exactly what we're talking about. This takes each season during the 1990s and sets it into the future championship formats. So check it out. Adam, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Do you have the link? There's Adam. Adam, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me for a few minutes at this
For
late
sure.
hour. I am currently in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
Where home to the underachieving Gamecocks. But what I wanted to say was this 2014 playoff is utterly ridiculous because all it means is that underachieving and undeserving teams will make the playoffs only to get slaughtered by superior teams. We'll see more JMUs. Now, JMU is a good academic school, of course, but has no business being in the playoffs. We'll see these lesser teams. So what's the solution? The solution is I would go back to the BCS formula. 4 teams make the playoffs, and they play a semifinal. And then number 1 and number 2 play a best 2 of 3 series for the national championship to determine the true national champion. Otherwise, we're going to have teams like Boise State that has a blue football field, SMU, where the Pony Express departed many years ago. And how is that a playoff where deserving teams are actually justified in being? They have no chance of winning. In the last 35 years, the teams that have won the championship have always been ranked in the top 5. go back to the top four, have a best 2 of 3, home, home, and home. So, for example, Alabama and Clemson in 2016. Alabama gets the first game home in Tuscaloosa. Then we go to Clemson, we come back to Alabama. We'll have a true national champion. We will not have these ridiculous teams being in there. And these fat bureaucrats that make up the college football committee really don't know what they're doing. And it's really destroying college football, as is the way that we're paying players, and as is collectives that are giving teams advantages based on money. So that's my solution. And the reason I wanted to call in is to get your thoughts.
Well, I believe you know my thoughts about playing a best of 3. So, in your defense and on the pros side of the pro versus con would be, yes, it brings another level of legitimacy to whomever would win the 2 out of 3 games or the 2 straight games to win a national championship. It confirms that whatever was accomplished on championship night was not a fluke or a one-time thing. It confirms, okay, because we know that these teams have good nights and bad nights. There are outcomes that are based on various situations and so forth, but it would just confirm the legitimacy of the championship. So I understand your thought process there. I just don't think it's practical. I don't think it's good for entertainment of the sport. So from a practical standpoint, these guys, run into each other, and to expect them to run into each other 3 times, I don't think is practical. I don't think we as a sports population, a sports society, we're not conditioned to watching football teams play 3 times against each other. We're conditioned to football being the ultimate big game, big event, one-time event sport. Not we're going to watch different pitchers take the hill for 7 games and watch the Yankees and the Red Sox play some epic series. It's just, I don't think it's practical, and I don't think, especially in this era where players are looking for an opportunity to move on to the NFL and protect themselves, are they going to be willing to do that?
I think you make good points, and I would just have 2 brief points in response. Number 1, 2001, Miami and Ohio State. I would have loved to see a game 2, and if there was a game 3, game 3. Second point is, college football has made a lot of changes over the last 15 years, a lot of dramatic changes. Why is the change that I'm proposing so anomalous relative to the changes that I've made? Why not try it and see what happens?
Okay. Well, I think I made good counterpoints there. I have nothing else to add. The selection of the teams, the BCS. So I think when most fans think BCS, they think computers. I don't have a complete confidence in the computers, but I also think that there is a place for the computers. However, most of that formula was human based. It was based on rankings by very flawed, sometimes ignorant people voting.
Yeah. So the biggest controversy of the BCS era was not whether we should have 4 teams, it was who the 4th team should be. So I would endorse a model that says the top 4 teams get in, but there will be a play-in game, if necessary, for number 4. And I don't mean to be repetitive, but if we do it that way and we get the top 4 from that, a best 2 of 3 series after the semifinals seems to me a better way to determine the national championship without necessarily sacrificing ratings, instead of a 24-team playoff where 67 to 70% of the teams have no chance of succeeding. So why is my solution not at least tryable, given the solutions that have been tried? I don't know the answer to that, but my concern is that the people who are deciding these questions are not either qualified, are not qualified to do so.
Well, so I could answer your question in a number of ways that concerns football, but I'm going to give the most practical answer in the real world, and it has to do with money. That's
Yeah.
why we're not going in reverse. So, anytime anyone going forward wants to talk about a college football playoff format and changing it, I will certainly accept the conversation, the fantasy land conversation, utopia, whatever you want to call it, that could exist, might exist. It'd just be like if you said, this should be the alignment of college football conferences. There should not be Rutgers in the Big Ten. There should not be whomever you want to, and we should go back to 1995, and this is the way the conferences should look, and then maybe I'd tweak them a little bit different. That's all fun for conversation, but that's not going to happen. So we can have that conversation, or we can have a, let's take what is realistic and feasible concerning the powers that be and get it as close to what we would like as possible.
Right. So in 1998, how many people would have thought a 2014 playoff was practical? I think practicality is relative, but the last thing I'll say is I respect your disagreement with my proposal. I also think you're someone that I would vote for and support to be one of the decision makers in determining how to fix college football in this regard. So if you don't like my solution, what is yours?
Okay, so this is a few things that you have heard from me in the past and a few things that you will hear from me in the future. One is that approximately around 2019, 2021, something in that range, I did a live stream and I laid out what I thought was an airtight college football playoff proposal.
Okay.
And I believe, as I stated a few minutes ago, that has to start with scheduling. So
Yeah.
everyone's tied up with, should it be 12, 14, 16, 24? What should it be? Should we include conference champions? Not conference. How many automatic qualifiers? Should we have conference championship games? Should we, how many group of 5 teams or no group of 5s? Before we get that, the basis of evaluating the teams are the results on the field. And the results of the field become much more valid, and therefore the evaluation of the teams more valid if we get scheduling right. The scheduling in this sport is screwed up. So I think we have to schedule correctly first that will produce more valid results to better clearly and accurately evaluate the teams. Whether that's objectively or subjectively, I am pushing toward objectively. So in this live stream and various videos 5 years ago, I presented something where, to my best recollection, nobody was poking holes in this thing at all. And the issue, though, I would bring it back and just grab that video, jot it down, here it is, boom, going to throw it out there. One thing has changed drastically in the sport, unfortunately, and that's realignment.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a Big Ten with 14 teams, not 18 teams. We had a Pac-12. We had a smaller ACC. So what has happened is I was able to build an objective process to determine a 16-team playoff field that is now become more difficult to validate conference championships because of the lack of games played internally within these conferences. So I'm trying to wrestle with that. And because I want an objective process. I don't want 13 people telling us who the 12 best teams are, 14, 16, whatever the number is. I don't want people telling us this. I want them to be objectively determined. And then the last point I'll state is that I would think that most people think that there are 4, 5, 6 factors that they would consider in making a college football playoff format. I have determined 25 things that I would consider in making a new college football playoff format. So I want to produce a video and run through these 25 factors
I think you make very valid points. My only response would be why your solution does not run into the same practicality issues that my solution you claim does. But uh, I appreciate you staying on this late for me. If you will stay on another 5 minutes, I can get my super chat in. But my donation for your efforts. But I thank you always for an intelligent conversation. I wish you were part of the decision making process because that would, I think, make college football a little bit better. And I reiterate, from Columbia, South Carolina, that the Gamecocks are underachievers. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Adam. Good to see you, man.
Have a good evening.
Always good to see Adam showing up. Adam, from way back, has always given us things to think about. And notice he doesn't get offended when I don't agree with him, does not get offended when I poke holes in his systems, because there have been many times in which Adam has brought items to the table and thought process to the table that has caused me to say, you know what? That's a great idea. You know what? I did not think of that. Or I always thought of it this way, but you put a little twist on that. And if you are not willing to think outside the box, I don't even like stating that. That's a very generic term. But if you're not, so many times, Adam will have the confidence, the and show the transparency, vulnerability to come on and say, you know what, I've been kicking this around. I don't even know if this is a great idea. You're probably going to poke holes in it, but I think this is worth talking about. And I've thought, you know what, that's not going to work. But wait a minute, let's maybe that what you just brought to the table, if it was tweaked a little bit, added to or changed, you got something there. So there's a lot of value in brainstorming. And in the process of brainstorming, a lot of kind of dumb, ridiculous ideas are going to be thrown out there. But before they're thrown out, sometimes if you think about them different ways or tweak them or add to them or provide some kind of nuance to them, then some of the more ridiculous ideas become good ideas, become valid ideas with just a little bit of change or tweaking. And Adam, we thank you so much for your contribution. That is very kind of you. With a simple thanks, Mark. So it's been a while since we've seen Adam, but you can catch Adam and Gabe on the Rutgers Show. And the Rutgers Show is on Monday nights. I believe it's Tuesday this week. So, Adam, you will be happy to know that somebody contacted me this week asking about the Rutgers Show. They emailed me specifically saying, what's going on with the Rutgers Show? Is that on Tuesday? When is it? So I did get an email from a gentleman concerning the Rutgers Show. So Adam, Gabe, Rutgers Football Talk, and that is on Mondays typically, but they will show up on Tuesday this week. And oh my goodness, you guys realize I get up really early these days. So this is gonna be a quick one, but we got Roll Tide showing up.
Hello.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. This is Mooley.
Mooley. All right, there we go.
Yeah. So I kind of just joined. I didn't realize that you were about to end the call. So.
Oh, that's all right. Let's hear what you got for us.
Well, I don't know if this is already brought up, but at least I'm sure everyone had their thoughts with the 2014 playoff. Most people wouldn't want it, right? And just in general, expanding further.
So we just read something from Bill Conley. According to Bill Conley, according to On3, they took a media poll, they took a social media poll of fans. I don't know what kind of response they got, 5,000, 50,000, whatever it was, or how legitimate it was from a probability standpoint, from a polling numbers game. But 79% of the respondents, college football fans, said they did not want 24 teams in a playoff.
You said they did or did not?
Did not want
Yes.
24 teams.
That's at least the sentiments from, I know it's I'm a limited area, but in terms of people I've talked to, right? I think most college football fans would agree, would feel like expanding it devalues the regular season, right? But this is what I've seen from, I think, what was it, Heather Dinich or someone reported that Big 10, ACC, Big 12 have signed off on 24 teams. The SEC wants to expand to just to 16 teams. That's what I saw earlier. Someone in the comments can fact check me. And they want to, because and the SEC wants to maintain conference championship games, whereas the other three conferences are ready to get rid of it. And the SEC kind of saw the revenue for the conference championship games too. So given that, if you had to go with one of the two, what do you think would be the better solution?
Okay, so I am in favor of conference championship games if they can be made valid again. So I thought conference championship games were a genius idea back in the day from Roy Kramer, 1992 onward. And then we get to this 12-team playoff, and now we've seen where in the last couple of years they become somewhat meaningless. So if conference championship games in a new format, and I've seen a few proposed in which they, and mine as well, that if they were made meaningful again, that I would be in favor of conference championship games because I think they're fun, they're exciting, I think they're entertaining for fans. Even when there was virtually nothing on the line between Ohio State and Indiana, they turned in the highest rating of all time among conference championship games. But more than anything, because of the expansion of the conferences, conference championship games, if they're done the right way and they filter valid entries into the playoffs and really reward the winner and not necessarily penalize the loser, but obviously evaluate the teams properly that lost the games, then they're meaningful and they should be used in such a way because they can better determine a conference champion, especially again because we've got too many teams in these conferences. Therefore, it's going to be difficult to take away conference championship games and have valid conference champions.
Yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question because by the time I got done, I forgot what these proposals were.
Right. So that was kind of what was going to go into my next question. Is like, how do you even make them valid at this point, right? Because now with the expansion of the playoffs, you're having teams that are basically guaranteed a spot, but don't even make it to their conference championship games, right? So like Ole Miss, Oregon, Oklahoma, they lost more than one game in the regular. Well,
Yes.
Yeah, and they still made the playoffs.
The easiest answer to that would be buys. You win a conference championship game, you get a bye.
But do you reserve it for just the Power Four?
Yes.
Well, if you did that for this year, then that would have been a disaster, Mark. Because what happened?
I'm not giving you a cure-all. I'm just giving you the first step toward. I'm not saying that it would be applied specifically and in exactly the same way to the format we had last year. I'm just saying this is how you would make conference championship games meaningful, is you would award buys to winners.
No, I understand that.
But I'm not saying under last year's format.
Okay. No, I understand that. I just personally believe that there's more of a, at this point, given that the field is past 4 teams, it's double digits, is that I feel like it's gonna bring more like anger in terms of like Alabama played and got destroyed by Georgia, right? But then it's like, okay, well, there's the conversation of should they get penalized for playing an extra game versus, well, if you should at least show up, but then at the same time, did Georgia have a good that's basically what it came down to, right? And the committee, they made a decision to leave Bama in because they wanted to protect these games. Because if Bama were to be dropped off, it'd be a whole situation about the games being protected, right? And I will say this in terms of what you proposed. I think more likely than not, you'll have people happy than what it is currently at, because I know you're aware is last year, if you were to give the top 4 conferences buys, Duke would have gotten a bye, right? Even though Duke, the ACC championship game winner, lost to the American championship winner in the regular season, correct? So then the group of 5 is going to feel like what the heck? Why? How come they got a bye? They went 5 losses, and we may not even make the playoffs. Give it on under certain formats, even though we beat a team that has the bye. But to your point, that's also like a very strong edge case, right? Which kind of has been the theme. It's only going to work till something happens, till a certain scenario happens, and then that scenario comes, and it's like, well, there we go. I just don't think there's a perfect system.
Well, there's not a perfect system. So whatever my system, and I don't know if you were on the line a few minutes ago when Adam called, and I stated that I came up with about as good a system as I thought that is out there like 5 years ago. That was pretty airtight. I certainly didn't receive any comments or calls when I had a lot more people watching me that were poking any holes in my system at the time. However, something happened that completely made my system now invalid, and that's that was conference expansion and realignment. So that made the conferences too large to support the system that I built. That was an objective system because I want to get rid of subjectivity in determining these playoff teams. The thing I'll say about conference championships and conference championship games is, in one respect, I will defend the conferences, but in another respect, I will criticize them for not adjusting. So let's understand that conference championship games, and therefore the teams that were selected for conference championship games, this was all about the conferences valuing their conference, their champion to their conference, and only valuing the games played within the conference, and therefore coming up with a system that valued and rewarded the teams that played the best within the conference to determine the conference champion. So as you well know, you can win a conference championship. You can go 0-3 outside the conference, and it in no way affects your conference standing, because the conferences were only cared about, there was no playoff system that was tied to these conference championships or any conferences, period. There wasn't a playoff system. So it wasn't like they had the thought that, oh, well, we got to come up with a system that not only determines our best team in our conference, but the team that played the best overall to be a entry into the national playoff. Well, that didn't exist. So all they cared about was, how do we best reward the teams that played the best to get to the conference championship? And so then when the playoff became a thing that was then attached to the conferences did not adjust, nor were they forced to adjust, nor did the playoff committee or anyone in charge go to them and say, you may come across some bad situations here, because somebody could win your conference and they could go 1-3 outside the conference, and that 1-3 should matter toward a national playoff, even though it doesn't matter toward who played the best in the conference. So this needs to be addressed. Well, it wasn't, and therefore we had Duke of 2025.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. And just to go off of what you said is, college football, I'm not much of a college football historian, so I'm going to really rely on you here. But in terms of shared champions, uh, declare polls declaring champions at one point before bowl games even played, confusing system. College football has at times taken a while to adjust. Am I correct in my assessment?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm going to ask, I don't even know how to ask it, because if I'm going to be honest, if I try to see if myself as, like, let's say if I'm an NCAA commissioner, I'm just like, well, even if I propose something, I feel like it's going to have to start with the conferences first in terms of fixing this, because you mentioned you had a good system. I completely agree. If we can break up these conferences and have it to where an objective system, like we have 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that all play each other instead of one team only playing half the teams, right? So then the variance is so large. At least you can have some sort of objectivity. And if I'm going to be honest, in a 12-team playoff, if there is one, let's assume we have a situation where back then 5 conferences, 10 divisions. If there was near the bottom of the top 10, you see a 7-5 Purdue out of the Big Ten West. I think I'd be fine with it, because they at least went through a stretch of their own conference. Am I saying it's perfect? No, but their side of the conference, they were able to go and win that. I think that at the bare minimum will show at least some sort of you know what I'm saying, some sort of, hey, out of these group of teams, this is the one that should be represented. You know?
Yeah. So I think that if you build a valid system and it's proven over a period of time, then you can get away with those oddities, much like the NFL. When a team with a sub 500 record or a 500 record wins a division in the NFL and advances to the playoffs, nobody throws a hissy fit and goes crazy. Sure, people make comments and say, why is that 8-8 team or 8-9 team now making the playoffs? There might be a random comment here and there, but it's been a tried and true system that is kind of a one-off. It's an aberration. It's not like that division is always horrible and produces the worst division champion. No, it just cycles through, in one year out of every 15 there's some kind of oddity there. So as long as there were conferences and therefore divisions built in such a way that there wasn't some obvious lame conference or division, I would not have an issue with that either.
No, I agree. I think, yeah, it's going to just come down to if we are able to find the most ideal system to just not overreact to like an extreme edge case.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody is a perfect system, including me, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, you can
Okay. Well,
always come up with some kind of situation and say, well, if this happened and this happened and that happened, then your system would look really bad because so and so would make the playoff.
makes sense. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's all I had for you, Mark. That was a good discussion.
Thanks, Muley. Appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Of course. Muley's been calling for a long time. Muley's a good guy, always has good things to say here at the Voice of College Football. Ditto Pow Car. Always, this is just the customary phrase right here. That's just what he comes with every time. And I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Jackson Johnson in the building. The Jacksonian. You can look it up right here on YouTube. Jacksonian. He's got his show rolling. There we go. All right, folks. Yeah, the deal here at the Voice of College Football is that we have a lot to announce, a lot to discuss, a lot to present you, both in regards to the landscape of college football and all the various issues that are facing this sport. This college football playoff situation, that's at the forefront, but also you got transfer portal and eligibility and the revenue sharing and the NIL that has to be determined. We did not get to some of the comments that were made, and some of the stuff I caught online concerning the House settlement and how that's being judged and evaluated at this point. But we will. And I know that I've not been here as frequently nor as consistently as I have in the past. And that is because I got to go make a buck, and I also have some family obligations and so forth. However, we will continue to pound the drum, beat the drum. And I do think that all of you need to think about 79% of you, and I do think that that sounds pretty accurate. 79% of you do not want 24 teams in a playoff. 79% of you. Therefore, why are we headed toward 24 teams in a playoff? Because this is all for you. When you really take it into account, the only reason all of this exists is for you, for me, for us, the fan. Without the fan, it doesn't exist. Without the fan, the game does not exist. It still exists. There's still a game called football, but people just play it for leisure, for enjoyment. They play intramurals. It only exists as a billion-dollar industry because of your support. Therefore, you should be served first and foremost. Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Muley, thank you so much for the contribution. It's much appreciated. Thank you for being here at the Voice of College Football. I am only going to say this. This Saturday, there will be a special posting, a special edition of the Voice of College Football. That's all I'm going to say. This Saturday, a special, unlike anything we've ever posted before here at the Voice of College Football. This Saturday. Intriguing, huh? Yes. Thank you for hanging out with me late night on a Monday. Thank you for caring for our sport, for loving the sport that we all love. And also thank you for forgiving me for being late. Again, I was on the phone with my wonderful son, and I cannot deny that boy a phone call. Cannot do that. All right. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. Here on the channel, we post the schedule for the entire network. I try to do that every day. Some days I miss, I forget. But we do have that posted for us here each and every day for the Voice of College Football. For me personally, the next time you'll see me is on the Iowa Show with Corey Bratta on the Iowa channel, Tuesday, 5 Eastern, 4 Central. Iowa football talk with myself, Corey Bratta. It's a good time, even if you don't care about Iowa football, which I know most of you don't. Still a good time. Corey and myself talking Iowa football and the Big Ten and the nation and his latest trip to Culver's. So we will see you Tuesday at 5 Eastern on the Iowa channel. Thanks for all the contributions tonight. Appreciate you.